here today with Dr. Azkul. He is president of the American Alliance for a Democratic Syria. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yes.
And I'll put the website for that organization up a little bit later in the chat. But, to cut right to it, there's an awful lot going on in Syria right now. There's been a lot going on, with that new transition. And in that new transition, some really tough stuff to talk about. Can you just kind of share with us what's going on right now in your words?
As the American Alliance for Democratic Syria, our focus is really the national security of the United States and how changes in the Middle East or Syria can affect or may affect.
HTS, right? Let's go to December of 2024. What happened in December of 2024?
Mr. Shara and his militia, back then was called Hayat Tahrir Sham or Tahrir Sham Front, took over Syria, most parts of Syria, and Assad fled the country. Since then, Mr. Shara became the president, and there is some changes in they made a constitutional declaration, and they built what they call a People's Assembly, similar to the Senators' Senate or something like that. With that parallel process, we thought that, fleeing of Assad will bring peace to the country. Unfortunately, 3 major massacres took place since then. First, the massacre against the Alawites in March. Then there's smaller attacks against minorities, and the second massacre, which was against the Druze in the south in mid-July. And lately, what happened in Aleppo against the Kurds. We always think about how is that going to affect our country? How is that going to affect the United States? As you know, Mr. Shara was named Jolani. He was one of the terrorists who was on the terrorist list by the United States. And the president lifted the classification of him as a terrorist. And even there's some sanctions against Syria that was lifted lately by the senator, the Congress. Our concern stems from 3 layers. The first layer is the current government, represented by Mr. Shara and his Minister of Exterior. When they talk, they seem to be trying to talk diplomatically, use the language that the West seems to accept. They use the right words, but internally to their people, the Syrian people, we keep hearing things that are concerning to the Syrian people, things that perhaps trying to radicalize the country. Starting from the constitutional declaration that states that the religion of the president shall be Islam, but doesn't say what the nationality should be. So that was a big red flag. There is other changes and orders that we heard over the past several months that is favoring Islam and Sharia as source of inspiring the governmental constitution or governmental behavior, on the long run. So this is from the level of the president and his cabinet or the executive branch, although we don't really have the 3 branches that we know in countries like the United States or the West. Then comes in the...
Wait, let me pause you for a second. Do we know that the branches in Syria what might we refer to them as, just for comparison?
Well, I mean, typically in Syria, before December 2024, Syria, even in theory, has 3 branches, right? The executive branch led by the president, the judicial branch, legislative branch. The Syrians know very well that these branches were basically paralyzed by Assad, who was a dictator who was like controlling all these branches. So when Shara took over with the THS, we were hoping that this will change and the people of Syria will have the ability to build their country where 3 distinct governmental branches are established There's separation of powers. There's separation between religion, ideology, and governance. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. So as I started to talk about how, with the narrative that the head of the government and his cabinet are addressing the people and the orders that have taken place, it just makes a lot of people concerned and raises a lot of red flags. As I mentioned to you, a lot of it has to do, for example, minimizing women's rights, making Islam as a primary source of legislative and executive decisions. Now that's at the narrative level. At the action level, we saw the government. Three big massacres took place in the past, perhaps 13 months. The first massacre was against the Alawites in March 6th, 7th, and 8th. Thousands of people were killed. The way the government dealt with that was initially was denial, like, oh no, this didn't happen. We were just coming after remnants. They tried to attack our troops.
Sam, what city was that in?
That was the coastal region. Widespread, actually. It wasn't a targeted city. It was a targeted minority. So the whole coastal region was attacked, including Alawites out of the coastal region, even in Damascus and Homs. So Homs is in the middle of Syria. It's not coastal, but we still heard of stories of Alawite being attacked. So the government narrative was like, yeah, this is not true, that we were coming after remnants and we killed them and we took care of them, but we did not attack civilians, until videos start circulating about the massacres, videos that were taken by the government soldiers themselves. So I'm going to use government, but this is really a transitional government, and a lot of people don't believe it's a government. But when these videos start circulating and got to the United Nations, the United States, and Europe, then Shara and his government came together and said, yeah, I think there is some errors here and there, individual errors, they call them. And they started an investigation. And the results of the investigation were so biased that very few people were, mentioned as criminals. I think in the number of tens to something. We didn't see any arrests, and it clearly stated that the government was not responsible. At the same time, when the report was issued, the Shara forces were attacking Sueda. So the majority Druze, it's about 500,000 people, about 90% Druze. There's about 10% Christians, and perhaps 3% Bedouin or something like that. Also, over a course of 48 hours, about between 2,000 and 4,000 people were killed. A lot of civilians. They attacked the hospital. Physician friends were killed. I know them personally. I know 2 relatives were killed. The house of my in-laws were burned. They were not in it. My sister had to flee her apartment 4 times. Again, we were faced by a narrative that what happened in Sueda is that the Syrian forces are trying to resolve a conflict between the Druze and the Bedouin. When the government forces entered Sueda on July 14th and 15th, between 2,000 and 4,000 people died. Initially, they denied the massacre. Their media was completely denying it, saying that the government now took control part of Sueda. Then the Israeli forces attacked the Syrian forces, and Mr. Shara forces. Then the videos, also taken by their own soldiers, by their own fighters, started circulating, and the Druze community all over the world and other friends helped us get these videos to decision-making points of power, like the White House, the Congress, the Senate, the European Union, United Nations, you name it. We were able to deliver these videos that were taken by their militiamen. Eventually, they Shara and his group, they started talking about individual errors. They were talking about like these were errors. We fell in a trap. They're talking about things as if it was something that was harmful to the government forces. Did not acknowledge the death of thousands of people. About 195,000 people were displaced from their villages. That is 36 villages that were burned down. And these people are still being displaced. The whole area of the Druze community was under siege for a few months, with very minimal resources coming into Suez. Eventually, there was a truce that was brokered by Jordan, the United States, and the Syrian government. And the truce is still being violated on a daily basis. I mean, talking to people on the land, every day there is a violation of this truce. We hear every day that somebody's being killed or a house being bombed or something like that. So that's what happened back in July. Now, fast forward 6 months or 7 months later, we heard about this attack on the Kurd minority neighborhoods in Aleppo. It's like two neighborhoods in Aleppo, mainly inhabited by Kurds. I don't know how much you know about history, but Kurds are like an integral part of the Syrian community. They live in Damascus, they live in Aleppo, they live in most cities, in addition to their main presence in the northeast. What is different this time is we did not see many videos circulating of the massacres. We saw a few. I don't know if you saw that video they're pushing a woman off of third or fourth floor, similar to what happened at Suez. Saw them exactly. They were dragging another dead body down the stairs and using, things like "what a pig" or bad words about these people. There's other videos of them humiliating people they captured, and we start hearing reports about when they ask the civilians to leave, they tried to separate men and women, and a lot of Kurds men were disappeared. They were taken to unknown places, and I think time will tell how many of these people were captured and how many. Hopefully, very few were killed. I hope that this is. I hope it's untrue. I really do. So we keep seeing the same theme: government saying one thing to the world, saying another thing to their own people, making decisions that are clearly favoring Sharia law, and then their action are clearly attack.
Let me pause on that one for
Yeah.
1 second. So, I mean, just the gravity of that. So a soldier approaches you and said, "Are you Alawite? Are you Druze? Are you Kurd?" And if you say yes to any of those, you're shot and often killed right on the spot.
Yeah, there's like 2 videos in Suez circulating, and very many videos like that. But the very famous 2 famous videos. In one example, they ask the guy, "What's your religion?" And he says, "I'm Syrian." And they say, No. What is your religion?" And when he says Druze, they shot him. And another example, an older guy, they asked him, "What is your religion?" And he said, in a fatherly way, he said, I'm here to buy some bread. I'm going to the bakery." Did they ask him, "Are you Druze?" He said, "Yes." And then they shot him right away. So at least 2 videos that circulated widely, but there's a lot of evidence and videos that clearly targeted people based on their faith, based on their religion, based on their ethnicity, or based on their belonging to a different, Kurds or something like that. So these are concerning. I would be concerned if I'm somewhere in the White House or the Congress for the following reason. Terrorism is not something people can quickly change, can just abandon. It's not something that you change political alliance or you change your clothes. You can change your clothes, but you cannot change your ideology. This is an ideology that was fed to kids, starting like in their maybe early adolescence through their youth, and it is hard to expect this ideology to go away out of nothing.
And we've seen this movie in recent wars
Exactly.
play out.
Exactly. And we saw examples. It's not like the first time. We know what happened in Afghanistan, how the Al Qaeda was established, and we thought they're fighting our enemy, which was the Soviet Union back at the time. And then they turned their guns and they started fighting and killing American innocent people. My concern is we don't want to see this exact scenario happening 10 years from now, where we say we told you so. So if I am a congressman, a senator, a White House staffer, I would be very concerned about that.
Hey, let me pause for a second. So the scenario that we want to emphasize that you're articulating, that I want to underscore that I'm hearing you say, is we don't want to seed and make fertile this environment where all these kids and young people just fall prey, and we create Afghanistan all over again, and we create a whole new wave of terrorism. That's what I think what I'm hearing you say.
Exactly. Now the difference is the Middle East is very sensitive area. It's like it's full of oil, but so it's flammable. It's easily flammable. You have Israel on one hand, you have Turkey, which is a NATO country, you have Jordan, which is a strong ally of the United States, you have Egypt, you have all these Gulf countries that are not far away from Syria. The last thing you want is a hub of terrorists centered in Syria. Just a location that is close to Europe. They can easily sneak into Europe. And there is a lot of concerning things that have been happening. For example, a lot of the foreign fighters now are being naturalized as Syrian citizens. And I call this terrorism laundering. So they're laundering these terrorisms. They have now a Syrian passport, and they can go anywhere they want. And when a terrorist goes from one country to another, what they do, they still carry their ideology. These terrorists did not come to Syria because they are poor. They're not coming after financial reward. They're coming in for an ideology. So, which is hard to treat. It's not like you can just pay them and make them happy. They have an ideology. They have a goal. They wanted to establish an Islamic emirate or Islamic caliphate. They want to kill all the. I'm talking about jihadis. I'm not talking about a special religion or a special group. I know that as a human, we all have our biases. But jihadis specifically, they are very clear about their goal. They want to establish their own nation. It's a nation that has no room for any other religion. If you belong to a different religion, you either die or you convert. Even if you convert, you will still be looked at as a second-class. Even women are classified as second-class citizens. This is going to be a hub, which I think it's going to be a problem for the United States for the next 10 to 20 if we don't take action right now. As I heard from one of the politicians before the cement.
Let me pause you on that politician note for just 1 second. And I believe I met you at the UN, of course, protesting outside as they had Rubio inside welcoming al-Shara, which was, wow, such a juxtaposition. One of the women there, Itab, was telling me that they would yell this phrase that meant that the jihadis were entitled just to take the women and do with them whatever they wanted to, whether it was rape or what have you. What was do you know the phrase? She used a phrase, I don't remember off the top of my head, but it was just jarring the way she described this.
I'm not sure what she was referring to, but there's certainly in the jihadi ideology, they interpret the Quran text in a way that allows them to, when they invade another area, so all the men shall be killed, and all the women shall be captured and treated as sex slaves. Assets are theirs, and they kind divide these assets, whether it's like money, gold, animals, farm, whatever it is back in the day, and even nowadays. And we saw that first, witnessed that in Suez. The towns where they invaded, they were successful in invading 36 towns that I mentioned to you. They stole the houses, all the houses, even down to agricultural devices, tractors, plows, things like that, even like geese and chicken. They stole those. And it so happened that one of the Western journalists was interviewing or doing something, and the tractor with the geese and chicken on top of it was passing by towards our neighboring city of Dara. So they did that. They took women, they raped women. A lot of stories that it's just heartbreaking for me to talk about, but they did that, and it's not something theoretical. We have seen it firsthand. They did the same thing in the coast to the Alawite women, and they continued to do that even after the massacre. They would kidnap women and take them away, even like married women. They will take them away from their houses and deal with them as sex slaves or force them to get married to somebody else or something like that. So this is the reality in Syria. And I just worry that this is something cannot be contained with borders. This is not something you can say, I'm going to deal with this later, let them figure it out. This is something that can easily cross borders. Ideology is not something you can easily, and less expensive than waiting for 2, 5, or 10 years down the road until things are very obvious. Unfortunately, in Washington, things are very polarized, and it's like Republicans versus Democrats, and what the Republican wants to do and what the Democrats wants to do. But at the end of the day, you're putting the U.S. interest at stake here.
Tell me, U.S. interest at stake, like, this has been an education for me, tremendously following, watching what's going on and studying, listening, writing, and so forth. And the way that I've gained a whole new sort of view or understanding on the term geopolitics. And you're talking a moment ago about Syria not necessarily having a tremendous amount of oil reserves per se, but being kind of a tollway of sorts, and this sort of horse trading under the auspices of geopolitics. They turn their back and allowing all this other stuff to go on. So, for the geopolitics, it sure feels like that's at least part of what's going on. Is that here or there?
Deep hopes in my mind. I hope that the government knows what they're doing. I mean, it's obvious this is a terrorist group that took over. Everybody knows that it's switch. You don't just switch and all of a sudden they become friendly people. They continue to do the acts that they're very good at, which terrorizing people, beheading, killing, raping, capturing people, throwing people off balconies. I hope that somebody knows what they're doing. I trust my government. I trust I just want to make sure we do it right. And I think the easy way to do it is just treat it as early as possible. It's like a disease. You don't want to. The longer you wait, the more complex and expensive and sometimes futile if you wait too long.
If we haven't, let's assume some of our audience isn't terribly sophisticated, which would be me. I think an easy thing for a lot of just average folks in different places across the U.S. If you said, jihadis and ideology, I think people might have to stop and pause. But if you said Nazis, people are like, oh, wow. Okay. Wow. But how would you compare or contrast, the ideology of what the Nazis were doing compared to the jihadis?
In fact, there's a lot of similarities, and it's easy to learn from our history books. They waited for the Nazis, the appeasement policies that they were doing back before World War II, until the Nazis invaded half of Europe. They were able to remove Hitler and his Nazis, but that was a very costly price to pay. I think if they, acted early on, they would have saved all these people who died, innocent people who died. That economic delay, that economic cost that was paid by Europe and the world. Now think about this for a second. After World War II, the Allies and the United States were very successful in eradicating Nazi ideology by implementing denazification after the 1945 and assisting Germany, to kind of stand up again economically. They implemented denazification to make sure that the ideology is, and the government should think about something similar. I call it de-jihadification. We're not against any religion. We're not against any ethnicity, but there is certain things that jihad, which is basically it's a hate speech. It's a speech that calls for killing other people who don't believe in the same belief system. I think this should be criminalized, and I think the U.S. has the power to come to the Syrian government and say, "Listen, we're going to support you, but here's our conditions. You got to do this de-jihadification policies, which involves 1, 2, 3, because we had success back in the 50s, and we want to help you also succeed." Now, if the government agrees, then we know that probably they have intentions to really bring the Syrian people and the world to a better place in 5 to 10 years. If they resisted, or if they started playing games, then we know that they are really not, they don't have the right intentions. And this is not against a certain religion or specific
Sure.
ethnicity. We all know that, Christianity has its own struggles, and until the separation between church and state back in the 1600s or something. And I think it's time for us to think about solving the issues in the Middle East once and for all. If you look at the Syrian people, they are cheap labor, skilled, educated. It can be a gold mine for the United States in terms of like cheap labor, manufacturing, and a lot of things that can replace some of what, to buy a nice car, to go on vacation, instead of sending these young men and boys to the mosque in certain jihadi ideology fed areas, and they were taught that, hey, the Jews, the Christians are terrible. We should eradicate them, and so on and so on. So it's just helping the people. You need a power to kind of guide that transition from a country, a failing country. Syria is a failing country, to a country that becomes a real asset, a real ally to the United States, instead of becoming a threat in 5 to 10 years.
And let me just kind of throw this at you, maybe another kind of a simple analogy. If you take, I've done a lot of work with inner city kids here in Washington, D.C., where I live, and I've seen like just what that time does to positively impact those children. It blew my mind. I saw it firsthand over about 5 years. Actually, without the time spent with the children, just as these young children in Syria, dirty, idle hands do the work of not so good, so to speak. These kids, they might gravitate towards jihadists and that sort of thing. And the kids in the Chicagos of the world may obviously, right, gravitate toward gangs and things that don't serve them. Whereas kids that have some purpose and some meaning, like maybe you were just talking about if the U.S. were to, invest in the labor, the tremendous amount of labor that's there in purpose. Like we're talking about two very different outcomes, right? Is that part you're articulating?
Yeah. Yes, I think the so you have two population groups that you have to deal with: the people who are already jihadis, they're already trained, they're already brainwashed, they're already they committed crimes already. So this is one subset that needed to be looked at, and maybe those of them who can be rehabilitated, they should be. Those of them who should go to court and spend time in prison should be go to court and dealt with, and so on and so forth. But you also have this group, young men, young boys, who are trying to figure out the world, trying to figure out what to fit in the world. What is it that they can, the impact they want to create or have or leave. And I have a teenager, a 17-year-old, who is an idealist. He wants to solve the world hunger. Make sure that the peace is 100% all over the world. But these are the groups that need to make sure that they are cared for and given an opportunity for education, for have some economic opportunity, understand about the women rights and why women are as good as men, or maybe a little bit better, and so on and so forth. So these are the two groups that I think we have to look at when you look at the Middle East. I just want to make sure that just letting people or Islamic governments run with it's not going to lead to a good.
Don't ever hesitate to correct me where I'm misspoken, because I'm still learning here. Understanding is that when he was al-Jolani, he was in kind of a maybe middle class family. I believe toward med school, maybe a little bit of, optometry school, something along those lines. And he was swept up, the way I understand it, in some of the, the Middle East wars of the time with the ideology. He got swept up in the ideology. And so instead of him being like, I don't know, a physician or something now, he went the opposite direction. That's my kind of loose understanding of it. How would you articulate that?
Yes. I mean, he tells the story himself. I mean, when he was around 20 years old, he started going to one of these mosques. And this mosque happened to have one of these jihadi ideologists who started telling him about, America being an evil country and evil people, and how we, should go and fight them and kill them and this and that. And as a 20-year-old, he started to kind of look at that and say, yeah, we should do that. Why not? And that's when he went to Iraq to fight with the jihadis against the U.S. troops during the Iraqi occupation back in between 2003 and 2006, when he was arrested. So that happened to him, and many, many, many young men in Syria and Jordan, Iraq, and a lot of Middle Eastern young men actually subscribed to that. Because it kind of betrays the victim, Islam being a victim here, and the U.S. being a perpetrator trying to eradicate Islam or something like that. And the fact that you can, if you do this, then you're probably going to go to heaven. Whether you die or not, then God will reward you. And I think that's something that a 20-year-old might be able to imagine and subscribe to that easily. I mean, it's hard to convince a 50-year-old to do that, but a 20-year-old, 18-year-old is easily influenced by this ideology and idealistic approach to right and wrong and Sharia, haram and halal, which is, the right and wrong in Sharia.
And I want to take a step back for just a second. This may be a little bit redundant, but I want to go back to the organization that you're the president of. And just have I want to make sure I pay proper, attention to that. Could you kind of explain again in a nutshell what the organization is, how it came to be, like what your goals are for it, and kind of where you're at in the process? I guess your efficacy or your success with this organization. And name it again too for me.
Yeah, so it's the American Alliance for Democratic Syria. It's still a young group in its infancy. A bunch of us people who believe in the same vision that what's happening in Syria is going to impact the United States interests and whether it's economic or political in the next few years. We noticed that I think America first doesn't mean that we just close the borders and hope for the best. You can close the borders for immigrants, but you cannot close it for ideology. And so we got together and we formed this political group. And we're still attracting a lot of like-minded people to help us in delivering our message to the government. to the White House, to the state, to the Senates and the congressmen, to make sure they understand, because we have the knowledge and experience in the Middle East, being somebody who was born there, and we see things perhaps from a little bit different perspective, and encounter things firsthand sometimes. Like me being a Druze, I had personal stories. I can tell you about personal stories affecting my in-laws, for example, or friends who went with college. I went with to college, to medical school, or people who are relatives, a cousin or an uncle or something like that, a teacher. So these are personal stories. That it's not like a story that we heard over. It's just direct experience that we had to deal with, and I just don't want this to protract and kind of extend to the rest of the world, especially in the United States.
Very, very well said. Let me just, thank you for being here and thank you for making the time. As we wind down, is there anything we left out or anything else you just want to share?
I just hope that the our government have a plan. I hope they have a plan to address that the actual behavior of the government is different from what they are saying to the United States or to the world. I know that Mr. Tom Barak is heavily involved. He sees and he knows and he watches. I hope that he can see the how is that going to unfold down the road, and I hope they have a plan to avoid it. And at the end, we wanted our country to be safe and continue to be the most successful economic power, and for our kids to enjoy for years to come.
Dr. Azkul, thank you so much for being here. Real pleasure.
Thank
Hope
you.
we can do it again.
Absolutely. Have a good day.